Yes, in this video we are going to be looking at balancing your rig, where to put your weight, how to do your weight, and a really cheeky way without four corner scales to measure what's up front. Let's delve right into it.
Hey, what's up? Adam from Reactive Train. So let's talk about balance and what you need to do to get a rig to, well, not really perform party tricks like that, but actually perform well on the course. And this goes right back to your basic SCX24s or to something a little bit more specialized like the Jawbreaker you've just seen, and really kind of how I go about doing it. I don't use four corner scales because, well, I just haven't purchased them and they are quite pricey. And would I use them a lot? Probably not. So I figured out a really good way of doing it. So all you're going to need is a set of kitchen scales and something to meet the height of those, and I'll show you what I mean, and some basic maths. Got that? All right, get your notebooks ready. Let's delve in.
All right, guys, here it is. This is the scales I'm talking about. These are just under a tenner off of Amazon, just your classic kitchen scales, really. They are nothing fancy at all. And what else you're going to need is a platform that is of similar height. And it just so happens that my little turntable from my spraying booth is exactly the same height as the scales. So this works out really well. So what you need to do is basically load up your rig. So put all your wheels and tires, your battery in it, and all your electronics, and get an overall weight of what the entire rig is once it's all set up. All right, so I'm just going to put the camera down and we'll get the rig out. All right, let's get the rig on it. So this rig's got all the batteries in it, it's got all the electronics in it, and it's coming in at about 5.9. The 3D printer's going, so it's kind of shaking the table a little bit. 5.9. That's quite consistent. So we're going to round it up to 5.10, and that gets us our overall weight. Now, how do you split this? Well, first of all, we've got to find the middle of the rig, and your first instinct would be to go, well, surely that's the middle, this is the middle. And on SCX24 you'd be right, because the skid is actually almost in the middle of the rig. With the Bulldog Jawbreaker, the skid is this little screw just here. It's this tiny little section right here. So really this is where we're going to take the measurement from, because this is the split that we need to figure out. Let me explain a little bit better on another rig. So here's a perfect example. The FCX24M has the skid right up in the middle, and that is where you're going to take your line for balance and weight transfer. The thing with these is they are very back heavy, big bodies, lots of accessories, hard body, very light underneath. So to get these performing quite well, you actually need a 65-35 split on these, and then they actually perform really well. To do that, you would need to put all your batteries and everything up front, but that's not always. That's stuck down well, isn't it? Who's stuck that down? Right, 2 seconds. Blimey, that Velcro's well strong. Anyway, so for this, you would need to kind of put your battery right up in here. In fact, I'd actually make a plane and probably put the battery here, because at the moment the battery sits right on the back with all the rest of the weight. But we're going to explain how that works. We're going to take this battery off the Jawbreaker and we're going to put it on here, and we're going to do the measurement, and then we're just going to swap it over and see if we can get it to show the difference. Now, for the purpose of this video, I've actually put a tiny little gold mark on the skid, which is right there. That's going to indicate our center line of the skid. So this is how we want to split our weight. We want to go 65-35, okay, so that this body isn't overcompensating the rest of the weight. So we've got all of this to contend with, and we want to kind of take all of this and bring the center of gravity right down to the front and bring all the weight down to here to get these to perform a lot better with all the accessories on it. All right, so I put the battery in. So we're going to go and switch on the scale. Switch on the scale. Right, and let's take an overall weight. All right, so that's 398. Not very clear on the camera, but oh, there you go. Put it under the shadows. So we're going to round it up to 400. All right, so this is why you need two identical plates. This line here represents your split. Okay, so your halfway line of your rig. So to do that, what we can now do is marry. It's not exact science. It's more of a guess to science, but for a 7-pound scale, it will do the job. All right, so from the front half, we have 193. On the rear, 208. So, $398, $209, and 193. So those doing quick maths, you'll know that that's a smidge over what the actual weight of the vehicle is, and that's because this is a kind of rough guesstimate. So it's pretty close. I think it clocks out at about 402, and we rounded it up to 400. So again, 398 on the rig, and then roughly 100. That's now 193. So you can see that you can get really close, other than a few grams, splitting the diff between the line. So that's taken us up to 192. So it's not too bad. A few grams out, bearing in mind we're doing it ad hoc, we're going to get a few discrepancies. However, now what we can do is take the battery and move it and see what we're going to do. Now I'm going to leave the rig in position. I'm going to place the camera down and try and do this still in position. So I am actually pushing down on the rig. We're just going to put the battery there, slam the lid shut, and it stayed exactly where it was. And we're now clocking at 210. So we've got 210 on the front, and if we spin it around, you can normally marry it up, especially when you've got a skid that's 50-50. You can marry it back up with a lower line, and now the back has dropped down to 180. Oh no, 193. So now we're swapping it around. So now we've moved the battery right at the front. We're now bringing the front weight up, and this is how you're going to do it. You could put some brass weights on to start counterbalancing the rear of this, but that's how you can do a really cheap, tricky way of doing the kind of 60-40 split, which is what most people will say a stock SCX or anything like that should be. But with these big old bodies and lots of accessories, I would definitely recommend kind of throwing up a good 65-35, even though you've got all this, and it is quite hard. You're going to want to put some brass wheels on it, you're going to end up putting brass wheels all around it. Quite often I will put brass inserts on the fronts and just standard alley or plastics on the rear to help bring that counterbalance up. And what that will do is that will help it hug an incline. You'll start to really get a nice incline, and it won't kind of want to tip over as much. You'll be able to get a steeper gradient. It'll throw the front tires down to the ground a bit more, so you're going to get more traction on a climb. So it really does kind of work quite well with a lot of different rigs, not just some competition stuff. All right, let's have a little look at something else. All right, so here's got the old big old Transit, and this body is absolutely enormous. So we're going to see what this thing weighs overall. And there it is, back on 0. And let's have a little look under there. I can't actually see. Let's put it this way. 513. Okay, so 515. We'll round it up to 515. And we're just going to do a quick 50-50 split. 215 on the rear. And 318 on the front. So that brings us a little bit over than what the average weight was again. So let's have a little look at the average weight, which was 515. And we're just going to have another little peek at this. So it's 316. And we're going to add the rear. Now I'm kind of picking the center line of the vehicle. At the moment, we're going off the center of the vehicle. I'm going to kind of do that again. And 208. And that puts us at a total of 225. Now that's quite a bit different. So, you know, that's 10 to 15 grams more than what the overall weight is. And there's a good reason for that. The actual skid of the Bulldog LCG, not the Jawbreaker, is actually a lot more forwards. So really the center is going to be probably where that arch is. So we're going to do it again. So we're going to do the weight again. Back in there at 514, so around about 515. And now what we're going to do is we're going to split it on the actual skid. So, knocked it down a little bit. It's not a lot. So we've got 311. And then we're going to kind of do that again. So it's actually going to be hanging over the rear by about that, and that is 206, and that takes us to 517. So that gives us a much closer split. So that gives you an idea of where your split is now. So originally it was 515 or thereabouts as full body, and now what we're doing is we've just found the center of the rig, which is right here, right up towards the door, and that gives us a much even spread of weight. Well, actually, we're getting a better figure regarding the weight. So now we know that our skid, which is what I was saying, is just here. That's where your gearbox is. That's kind of your center line. And that really is the kind of rule of thumb. Your center line of your gearbox. So if your chassis sits everything up front, then really your split's going to be up front. Because you're going to have your 65-40 or 65-35 split or 60-40 split, and it's all going to be compacted around this area, and then you've got all this overhanging. And what that'll help do is then everything's up front, can then pull the nice big body along and get it doing some nice lines, which we've seen this pull some nice crazy lines. I never thought I'd get it up that big rock, but it went up. So there you go. Right, so how do you then fine tune? Well, you've seen a few videos that I posted and a few shots at the beginning of this of the Jawbreaker balancing. And the reason why I do that is because I don't have corner scale. So I'm going to set this up. Actually, let's have a quick look at the split on this one. So it's 491. We're just going to, the split is actually around here. So this is where the gearbox is. This is on the line of your scale. So we've got a 341 up front. And then we're going to spin it around. And a 250 and a 156 at the rear. I'm actually going to use the calculator for this because my brain has just gone fart. Which is 497. So overall weight was 494. So we're really close. We're really close to getting that percentage there. And obviously you can then do the calculations and divide. You can figure out by calculating what percentage of your number you've got up front to what you've got at the rear. So your overall 100%, which is your 491, and then you can divide it up and do that. So you got your 3-4-1. So straight away, you've got 60% of your weight is right up there, and then you've got your 150 at the rear. So yeah, this is definitely a kind of 65-35 split. So back to what I was saying, why do I put it on a balance? Well, that for me basically gives me a good indication of how the vehicle's leaning. So I'm going to set it up and we're going to have a quick look. Okay, so I try to use a relatively small, I quite often will do it on the little M14, but this has quite a rounded end on it, can make it a little bit difficult. This one's got a flat end, so there we go. Right, so that's the jawbreaker kind of smack bang in the middle. Now what you can tell straight away is that the chassis is running almost parallel. So it's not lopsided, there's not a lot of weight on one side than the other side. As you turn it, even with the axle, if you look at the axle at the moment, they kind of got the wheels, even with it kind of all skew with, it's still holding pretty good. I'm just going to try and straighten that up a little bit. There we go. And yeah, so at the moment it's just starting to peak down, but I'm spinning it quite aggressively. Just getting it back into position. So as it's turning around on it, it rotates on the skid. So now you can see a good example of where it's, if your weight is shifted, you can now start seeing it kind of move. So if I put it back to where it was, it will then go back to being straight again. So you can really get to know how the vehicle is. Now obviously this is all done by eye, there's no 4-corner scales like a lot of people do, and to be honest with you, it wouldn't be worth me buying them for just one rig, and in fact this is a lot more fun doing it this way. But really the primarily weight you want to focus on is kind of doing that split, that kind of 60-40 split, or 65-35, whatever you decide to do regarding the rig. Now if you're running an SCX24, this is the only SCX24 I've actually got up and running, so it's not really the best one to show, because I've actually got modified mag mounts for different bodies, but we can get an idea. Normally what you'd be able to do is take your battery tray, and if you turn it around, you can literally pick up these holes right here. Let me see if I'm getting close enough. Where's my little pointy stick? Right. Alright, so if you take your battery tray, you can mount to here, okay? And you wouldn't need to worry about those, although you can swap it around and you could mount it low down like that. But with some of us, we flip the motors around. So normally the motor would be facing at the rear, and we kind of bring the motor front facing, and that can then cause a little bit of issues trying to seat the battery, and sometimes it's actually sitting really high. So you need to make a compromisation about what you're going to do. I like putting my motors up front, and then what I can do is stick the battery right behind the motor and then pile everything else up around this area as well. So you basically got everything in the center. So if you were running a hard body, that would give you a relatively good balance, but you're going to notice the effects as you're kind of doing the climb. So if you're going to do that, what you then have to do is compensate a little bit by putting a bit of brass up front, like diffs and hub carriers, and then that would then bring that all back down to the front. So it really is a bit of game about kind of what you're doing with the rear vehicle more than kind of what the vehicle needs to do. For example, if you're building a trail truck and you're building a nice scaled heavy body like this thing, then you're going to want a lot of weight low down. Now actually this doesn't have an overly heavy chassis on it, surprisingly. I don't even think it's as heavy as this thing. Let's have a little look. Let's take that out. 287. Let me just pull this big old beast off. Pop and pop. And this is 252. But I've got all the weight is up front with this. So let's have a little look at how this is positioned. So I've actually got the ESC sat on top of the motor. And then I've got a battery sling, and the battery sits across here. So that gets it all up front. And it kind of sits like that. That's how it sits, and that's how it manages to get up things with that big old body on. So that is really kind of putting all that front weight right up the front. The Bulldog LCG chassis are already really low slung. They are little belly draggers, but they do bode well for these big old scaled bodies. So yeah, it's there's a little bit of brass weight in the front wheels, not the rear. If you look at my tyre video I did, you can really notice the actual technique on these. You see how they've got a nice bow on them. You know, they're more domed. So this has got the lead and tape trick to bowl the top off. And then if you look at the rears, you can see that they are flat, and that works so good. Really does work really well. Yeah, watch the super grip video, and it's a little trick in there to show you how you do that. Right, for those who were too cool for school, this is how we kind of calculate what's going on. So our rig is 500 grams. Up front, we've got 300 grams over the axle. Now we know that because we've just done the scale trick. So what you're going to do is you're going to minus those two together, and that will give you 200. So you've got that figure. You're going to want to divide it by the original weight. So you take what you've got, you've just worked out, and you divide it by your original weight. You then times that by 100, and that will then give you a 40%. So what that means is that you've got 40% left. All right. So that would be a 60-40 split. Yeah. So you're kind of calculating what's left, what's still hanging over the rear. So that's kind of where you're aiming for, and obviously that will help you decide if this number, when you work this out. So always do your front weight. So always calculate your front measurement. Yeah, don't use your rear. Calculate your front, because that will give you an indication of what's kind of going on up front. So you'll be able to start to see if this number starts going up and it's like 60%, then you know that 60% of your weight is actually hanging over the rear of your vehicle, and really you got to then start shifting it the other way to the front. Yeah, so this hopefully, you know, a load of scribbles can help you, but that's how I kind of do the maths on kind of just roughly working out what my split is regarding. So yeah, overall rig, then do the scaled trick, and that gives you your front weight. Then you want to minus those together to give you that figure. Whatever this figure is, you need to divide it by the original weight of the rig. Then we're going to times it by 100, and that will give you your percentage of what's hanging over the rear. Hope that helps.
All right, so hopefully that's helped you kind of figure out on the cheap, on a budget, with household instruments, to just kind of get a rough idea of what your rig is doing. And rule of thumb with most SCX 24s is a 60-40 split, But if you're going to want to go a little crazier, get some real good inclines, do breakovers and stuff like that, then I definitely recommend going up to like the 65-35 split. Definitely on some of the comp crawlers and even on some of the heavy scaled bodies, just really kind of keeping that front end weight up, especially when you've got Land Rovers and anything with a tall back like this. You know, when that starts going up, it's going to start falling backwards. So you've got to keep that weight nice and up the front to really pull the nose down and keep it on the incline. So yeah, all you need is, ooh, don't break it, the wife will know. Shh. All you need is a scale, really cheap and cheerful from Amazon, and something of equal level to balance your rigs. Find your center of your skid, and that will give you your split. Do your little formula. Job's a good one. Saves yourself a good 100 and odd quid, whatever it is, for these corner scales. Although they are really, really cool, and I probably will buy one at some point because it's just endless hours of mucking around, and they will give you corner to corner. But you know, I haven't got one yet, so I've got to figure it out. All right, guys, if you like this, then stay tuned because there's going to be plenty more. I'm going to do a shock one next because some of the pictures that turn up on the social media sites is just shocking. Man, nailing those dad jokes. Catch you later, guys.